Okay, so in order to apply images and audio files, we first need to get those files inside the main story structure file. The way we find that is by coming over here to View, Show Story Library. And this should path itself to Documents, Twine, and Stories, and it will show you the various story files that you have in the form of an HTML document. And I have created two other folders, IMG for images and AUD for audio. Now what I've got going on here is bad practice because it lumps everything together in the stories directory. You really don't want to do that. You really don't want multiple projects pulling from the same folders, especially if you have rather large games going. So it would be better if I had actually taken the Outsider images and audio, put them in their own folder inside the stories directory, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. But what you do need is an images folder and an audio folder. And in the images folder, I have a few images here that I've pulled off of Google and shrunk down to 800 pixels by 600 pixels. If you're making an actual game, you are going to have to come up with your own images, or at least find ones that are royalty-free to avoid issues with copyright. Same with the audio. I have some MP3s here, just a bunch of sound effects that I've pulled off of various sound effect websites. I will put a link in the description, as well as a music file from Tabletop Audio, which is royalty-free, and you just have to use an attribution license. But once again, those folders have to be in the same directory as your main project file for this to work, so that you can connect them. And we may as well go ahead and start in the crypt. So, directly underneath the header, I'm going to add a new tag for IMG, for image, and we're going to give it an attribute, src for source equals, and then give it the double quotation marks, and then close the tag, and then of course the backward slash so we don't end up using another carriage returns space. So now, inside of these quotation marks, we have to path to the source of the file that I want. So the first thing I need to say is the folder that the file is in, IMG, and then forward slash, and then write the exact name of the file I'm trying to get, which in this case is called encrypt.png. The file format is important. So I know that this file is going to be too big to show on screen, and I can use some other attributes such as width and height to change that. I only need to use width though in this case, so I'm going to say width equals quotation marks, and I could give it a specific pixel width if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and say 50%. So let's close this and now play the game, and it does not show the image. And this is specifically because of Twine. Twine, for whatever reason, does not render on its own. So to actually do this, we now have to come back here to Show Story Library, find that file, and open it so that it actually opens in a web browser, and you can see there's the image. Okay, so we're going to close this. Now, I've got to put in all of my images. So I'll be right back. Okay, it's finally done. They've all got their images sourced to the correct PNGs with a width of 50%. And I noticed inside the end passage, there's one last thing I want to do. I want to give the end here header tags as well. So now the end will be slightly bigger and red, just like the title. And now before we test the game, there's one last thing I want to add. You know, over there in the sidebar we had the title of the game. I would actually like to replace that with an image. So we're going to create yet another passage over here. And this one is going to be called Story Banner. This is another built-in name for Twine, so it has to be named this. We will of course give it the data tag. And here we're pretty much going to do the same thing with an image equal to source. Inside the image folder, I have created a title PNG, give it a width, and let's say 90%. It's a bit of a smaller image. Okay, so now we're finally ready to look at the game with pictures. Remember, in order to see them, we're going to have to go back to the library, open this in a browser, and there it is. So look around, exit the crypt, we go north, east, we'll go south, south, just make sure all the pictures are there. West, west, north, north. Okay. So of course there are two other pictures, the interior of the cottage and outside the gates, but we'll look at that in a minute here. And also, this is a little redundant, so I would like to get rid of that title. So the way we do that is actually back inside of the style sheet. So with the story title, what we can actually do is just say display none with a semicolon. And now if I run this again, you see it's taken out the title. Okay, so now let's add some audio. So we've already got audio in the folders. Now we need to add it as an asset, and we will do that in the story init. And just under here, we'll now use a new macro called cache audio. Cache audio. So you need to use this basically to preload all of the music that you will then later call using just the audio macro. So the first property we need to give it is a title or a name. In this case, my first one is going to be BGM for background. This is completely arbitrary, but you need to remember it because this is what you will use to call the audio later. And now, also inside of quotation marks, we need to give it the path to that audio. So AUD is the folder that I've got mine in, and the exact name of the file is called defiledtemple.mp3. Again, the file type is important, and then we need to make sure we use those closing arrows. So I'm just going to add in all of the others with a paste, and there's one last thing I would like to do here. This defiled temple comes from Tabletop Audio, and there is an attribution license for me to be able to use it. So what I'm going to do is use a comment, and it just follows standard HTML comments, which look like this. You have a left arrow bracket, exclamation point, dash dash, whatever your comment is, dash dash, and right arrow bracket. So basically what this means is that you can put anything between these two arrow shapes here, and none of it will render as code or text or anything. It's just there for you to see as a note, basically. But this is how I'm going to leave a note for the attribution license. So what I'm going to do is delete this, and underneath the song I need the license for, I'm just going to paste in the attribution license. So now I'm good to go if I want to use this in one of my own games. So close this, and now we can put the audio into the game. So the first one that I want is where we begin the game, in the crypt. And obviously this is where I will be using the background music to begin playing. And I'm going to use it right above the image, right below the header. And the macro we use here is audio. First I need to give it that name, which is BGM, and it's inside of quotation marks. And then I have a few choices here. In order to just play the song, you can just say play, and then close it off. Of course, give it the backslash so it doesn't take up another line of code. But I can also make this thing loop just by saying loop. Also, I'm not a big fan of taking MP3s off the internet and just using them, because the audio levels are kind of all over the place, and it's really hard to just make sure your audio is adjusted with the browser. So I'm also going to say volume, and I'm going to go 0.5, which is volume at 50% by default. So let's go ahead and close that and try it out. So I will reopen this, and you won't hear the music if you have your browser set to not autoplay, which I do. So I'm going to have to move, and now you can hear the music. So let's continue adding the other places I would like to have audio trigger. First is when you go outside and the door slams shut. I have an audio file in there for the door, so I'm going to just paste this in from the background music. Of course, I have to change it now, so the file is actually named door. I do not want this to loop, so we'll get rid of that. And in fact, I'll just go ahead and copy this one now because no other sound effects do I want to have loop. The next one will be when you pick up the shovel and come over and hit the gravedigger, but we may as well have it as soon as you make him unconscious. So in the unconscious passage, we will add this, and I will say shovel. Then we're going to go down to when you unlock the door, enter in here, and put it right there, and we will say unlock. And I have another audio file for when we flip the switch, so we'll add it right inside of the link replace, so it triggers as soon as you touch the flip the switch, and this will be called switch. And the very last one I have is when you leave the gate and run off into darkness. This will be called running. And I actually made an error here. Back in the unconscious part, we don't want this to happen every time you come into this passage, because you can come in here when you've already knocked him out. We don't want that sound effect to keep playing. So what we're going to do now is instead cut that out of there and bring it just above the grave digger lies knocked out before you. So now we only want it to play once if he is not unconscious, because you see here we then immediately set unconscious to true. So what we're going to do here is say if unconscious is false, then we paste back in that audio. Make sure you put the backslashes on everything, and then close the if statement. So now, when he becomes unconscious, this should no longer play. This should only be the one time. Alright, so our game should be ready to go. Let's give it one final test here, of course, with the actual file. Alright, we are inside the crypt. Everything looks good here. Let's look around. And the music begins. We'll exit the crypt. Hear that loud slamming sound. And we will... let's go east to the cemetery gate. It's closed. I see something I want to change here. I want to put that into italics. We'll do that later. Go down south. The door is locked shut. Let's go west, west, north, north. There's the grave digger. He has an old key dangling from his belt. In fact, all of these should probably be either italicized or have the key word, no pun intended, bolded. So let's go east, east. Alright, there's an open grave with a shovel near it. Let's take the shovel. Let's go west. Let's go east again. Okay, now it's just a grave. We go west, we go west. Hit him with the shovel. Okay, we can maybe raise the volume on that shovel just a little bit. He lies knocked out before you. Let's go back east, back west. He's still knocked out. Take the key. Go south. Go north. Okay, no key to grab. Let's go south. Let's go east. There's an issue there. We obviously don't want that to play. So, just like the audio for being knocked out, we need to fix that so that it doesn't play every time we come back to the crypt. Let's go down south, go down east. We can now open the door. Plays as we open the door. There's a musty interior. We flip the switch. We notice ourselves in the mirror. We flee the cottage. We can no longer re-enter. We go to the north. The gates are now open. We can leave the cemetery. And we run off into darkness. So let's take care of a few of those cleanup details. First, let's start with the gate. There must be a mechanism to open it somewhere. Let's go ahead and just put that inside of some I tags for italic. Go down to the cottage. Also do that around here. And then up at the gravedigger, where he appears to have an old key. Alright, and now the issue of the audio here. Well, fortunately, we don't have to create another if statement. We can see we've already got it right here. So all we have to do is just cut this out here and paste it inside there. And we also wanted to get rid of the volume here, and it'll just play at 100% volume for the shovel now. Okay, one last quick look at our changes. Exit the crypt, we go east, That is now italicized. Let's go back. Okay, good, it doesn't play again. Let's go east, north, take the shovel, west, west. Okay. A little bit louder that time. Take the key, south, south, east, east. Open the door, flip the switch, flee the cottage, go north, leave the cemetery. We run into darkness. And all of the items are there. So as you can see, it really doesn't take much to get started inside of Twine. Even if you don't know any coding, just having a few elements, a few macros in Twine, you can make a decent basic game. Of course, if you want something far more complex and far more robust, there is a ton of documentation. So I hope this inspired you to delve a little bit deeper, and if you end up making your own games, you can even submit them to Twine's story repository and have people play them. I've even seen people selling their games on itch.io, so this is definitely a fairly simplistic game engine that has some potential. But anyway, I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.